Okay, so it is setting up for Facebook Live. All right, so it should be live now.
Yeah, it shows we're live.
All right, awesome. So welcome, Alak and Kushal, to the Physics of Pranayama channel, the place for left-brained, right-thinking people.
I like that.
It's good for the start.
It's a great thing, yes. I've been wanting to do this for some time now, and in sort of uncharacteristic manner, I have been pushing it away, which is not my usual style. But so anyway, welcome. Any any specific things you'd like us to talk about? Because I have an idea in my mind.
Let's go with your idea.
Go for it.
Who can beat your idea?
Oh, so the one word that came to me when I was thinking about what I can talk to you guys about is transitions. Huh.
Okay.
In the we facilitate the happiness program, etc. And I've heard people say, "Oh, take a transition breath in and out." Remember when we start the breathing techniques? My whole life seems like it's only a series of transition breaths, isn't it? I mean, everything is a transition.
That makes two of us, or three of us, I should say.
Three of us, right? Yeah. So I'd like to start off by going way back, high school. The okay, we won't go to the biggest The biggest transition is the day you were born. Okay, that's the big transition. Fine, we won't go there. But the transition I remember is high school into college. Many years ago. That was you go from the home environment to a more diverse. At least where I was, we were in school in Bombay. Maybe you guys are already in junior college. I don't know. So how was that transition for you guys? The high school, not high school, but whatever, higher secondary school to graduate school. How was that transition? What
I
do you
think
remember?
for me that it's very interesting you picked that transition because that's the first time in my life, from my internalizing of that transition, I think I experienced what a failure is, right, in my head.
Hmm.
Because growing up, I was a very studious student, right? I would just work really hard. I had to be like in the top five in the class, right? It was just something that had to happen. It was a must have in my life, right? And all through my life, I think. So in 10th grade you have the board exams, and then in 12th grade you have the board exams, right? And so 10th grade I did excellent. I got into a really good, moved to another school. But 12th grade, my grades were quite poor.
Wait,
And
wait. Poor by your standards or poor by?
Our higher standards.
yes, very poor by my standards, right? And in life, that's what matters, right? It's the standards you set in your life. Otherwise, I think life is not bad at all, but it's what we make of it. And this is the time in your life when you decide what are you doing next, right? Are you becoming a doctor, an engineer, or I think one or a few of those pharmacists and all of those things. And this was the first time when I had to make a decision in my life with not having that taste of success, right? So I almost felt like somewhere I had to make a compromise when I chose something.
Hmm.
So that's how I remember this transition. Like, honestly, I always wanted to become a doctor, and that was something because both my parents are doctor. I have always seen them, work in the so we had a hospital on the first floor, and we used to live upstairs.
Mhm.
So, and my dad was a plastic surgeon. So we would get so many emergency patients, so much would be happening. Even at the dining table, there were so many conversations about patients and, all of that. So there was this thing about it felt really good when I saw my parents send somebody home healthy, or they felt like magicians to me, and I wanted to become one of that. Fortunately, even at that point of time, my parents, despite of my grades, had made that option available for me by getting me into school where they would sponsor me and get it there. But that was the time in my life where I decided that this was the time I had to stand on my own feet and move forward with what I had and not what I was always provided for. And that's when I decided to go for engineering.
Wow. Yeah. How was it for you, Kushal?
I think for me, it was a transition before a big transition, and I still was in my own la la land at that age, perhaps, very unaware of the realities of life, and just what we call the happy-go-lucky types. Not, you know, I was in a cocoon, protected and surrounded by all the comforts and love of the family, and I thought this is what life is, and this is how it continues forever. I kind of extrapolated to the till the end, it came very naturally to me. So I ended up choosing a path of least resistance. It's something that changed later in the life, but at that point of time, it just felt, I mean, I fortunately had grades to go anywhere, but I picked a branch of engineering which was the path of least resistance because my dad was a structural engineer, and grew up watching him, grew up going to construction sites with him, and so I thought, yeah, civil engineering will be easy. I don't have to work hard. If anything, I mean, I have a test bed at home. I can just learn. If I need a lab, I can go to dad's office.
Yeah.
Let's not work too hard towards it. Let's just go for this one.
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up choosing civil engineering as my as the branch for what I wanted to follow. And the first year into it, the transition happened. Okay, I made that decision somehow,
Yeah.
and the very first year, and in fact, first few months into it, I realized that I was stuck. I did not want to do it.
Oh no.
So that's where the transition, started and ended. And then I started the process of churning of what I wanted to do next.
Hmm.
And some seeds of growing up, really growing up, were sown at that point because I realized, geez, this is not what I signed up for.
Yeah.
And I couldn't see myself doing it for the rest of my life.
Hmm. But there's usually an option. This was in Ahmedabad, this engineering college thing. Yeah.
That's another factor in the path of least resistance is I had an option to go to a better college, but further away.
Ah.
To I chose to stay at home, and
But how could he have? Because otherwise we would have never
yeah,
met.
and so it's a part of a grand plan. So
I was going to come to that transition later, but
yeah, yeah. So, in fact, I mean, since you talked about transitions, I think all the transitions are already planned. We
at
just
one level,
we
at
just
one
wait,
level, yes.
we just wait for time to catch up to it,
Correct.
and then they show up, and then
Mm-hmm.
you go through them, thinking that you made that choice.
Huh, right. But so the question I had in mind was, did you ever consider like getting out of civil engineering and doing, I don't know, something else? Because there is a way to do it, at least at IIT when we were there. After the first year, you could decide based on your grades in the first year, you could switch your branch. That
No,
is,
I didn't have that luxury in where I was studying in Gujarat University. I didn't have that, and I spent too much time thinking about what I want to do next because I really wanted to not goof up the second time, and so, but I could not pull that trigger. Perhaps I didn't have the courage at that time.
that's it, right. Okay, so
I
four
was
years
in the
of
comfort zone. I was in the comfort zone, so I let it play along.
yeah, yeah, right. And especially, and it's a luxury, right, to go to engineering school sitting at home. I mean, I wish I could do it, but we had to go to hostel. So that was the first transition for me, going from the home
To the house.
Correct.
where you were the king, and now you're essentially a freshie who's going to get ragged like crazy in a one room in the hostel. What?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a, yeah. All right. So then, so you guys did engineering school, etc., in India. And then the next transition, like you graduate engineering school, and now what? You came to the United States for a postgrad or what?
No, I mean,
No, you can go.
I actually, I really thought, I was sure this is not what I wanted to do, but I wanted to get out of that small town I was in. I really wanted to explore and learn and do something else. So I wanted to come to US, but then I wasn't sure what I would do here because the choices available to me were almost dizzying. Like there were just too many things I could, anything I could pick up, I could do it. I had never seen that kind of, bouquet or choices in my life before.
Yeah,
I only knew before that two things, right? Either you become, I mean,
doctor engineer.
yeah, doctor, engineer. The part of the country I come from, there were only two choices. So I I wanted to get into business school. I thought I'll get into a business school, but business schools ask for experience.
Hmm.
Good business schools that I wanted to go for. So I thought I'm going to work for about a year and then gather some experience. Also, in that time, really think through what I wanted to do, and then arrive at and then go. So I actually stayed back in India for a year. I took a year off.
1 year, and then you worked for that year.
I worked for the year. I also traveled a little bit. I also dabbled into some other interests that I was pursuing at that time. So I tried different things in that year,
Yeah, yeah,
and then I came to United States
right.
a year.
Okay, so 1 year after, and about Alak?
So that was my exact transition that you were talking about. Is first time stepping away from home.
Ah,
And home was such a safe place, right? No matter where, how your day went, it was a place I could come back to and drop everything or knew everything would be taken care of. I had never stayed away from, and I was very close to my sister, to my parents, right? So that emotional bonding was, or something that I relied on a lot. And this was the first time stepping away from home and going so many miles away.
yeah.
And I still remember. So, of course, in the whole um, process of it, even my mind was okay, after undergrad, everybody goes to America for grad school. So, in that whole momentum, I did apply, I got admission, I decided to go. But never did I realize what was going to happen, right, at an
Uh-huh.
emotional level. It was just kind of just following and going with the flow because that's what everybody does.
Right.
And it was only when I still remember that moment when I sat on the airplane and I reached, so the flight was to Singapore at that time. I was coming to LA. And it's Singapore, I almost felt like I want to take a flight back home.
Back.
Like, how will I survive without my family
Hmm.
miles away? So
Yeah.
that was the transition.
I remember, when we graduated IIT, I decided not to come to the United States. I decided to stay back in India. But my good friend from Pune, he he was of course coming to the United States because he was a all India rank single digit person. I mean, come on, this guy is almost genius level fellow. And I used to go to his house in Pune where I could see the transition happening because there this math wizard was being taught by his mom how many whistles to give on a pressure cooker to cook certain dals. This was a big transition for this guy, isn't it? I mean, I could see that happening. I'm thinking, wow, man, I'm not doing any of this stuff, but this fellow is learning all this. So, did you guys, I mean, when you left home, were you like a as great a chef that you are now, or obviously not? Maybe I
Not
don't.
at all. Actually, it's such an irony because as it was decided, okay, I was gonna eventually come to America, my mom would like get in the mood of let's start planning, okay, let's start getting you trained, right? And every time something would happen where either my exams are there, or if when I was on vacation we had a cook somehow for whatever reason show up, and I would also show no interest in it at all. So it's quite amazing that all the cooking skills or all the interest in cooking is also something I developed only after coming here. And I still remember first year in America at USC. I used to survive on Pop Tarts and
Oh,
lot of like junk food because you're not realizing what you're putting in your body. It was easy food. You could metabolize a lot of it very quickly. So at that point, it didn't seem like there were any consequences or what was the need to really learn all this cooking.
yeah, right.
And now it's like the exact opposite. Like the joy in cooking is just something I kind of fall for every time.
So was there a weight transition also? Choop, like that?
Yes. And I think dating him was partly a part of it because somewhere I wanted to cook good food for him. I wanted to, make nice things. And that's kind of what pushed me in that direction of getting interested in cooking.
I still remember
Okay,
my
right. So
first experience of cooking. My roommate was he was a scientist. He was training to be a scientist. He's a rocket scientist now, and he was so precise. And I had never cooked in my life before. And he came, he met me for the first time. He said, I'm going to my lab, and he just quickly gave me the recipe. It was a very precise recipe, and I followed it to the T, and it just turned out to be disastrous. And he said, "You're not cooking from now on." He was a Bengali. He said, "You're not cooking from now onwards." That's it.
where was this?
This was in Pittsburgh. I came to.
Pittsburgh. Mhm. So wait, so you guys came to two different cities in the United States, but you met in India before you came, or how did that transition happen?
Yeah, we met in India. We met in undergrad. Actually,
Ah,
the first day of the undergrad, we met each other.
acha.
Then we were good friends, and then we really came together here in this country.
Okay, right.
Started dating here.
Very, very, high phone bills. Because
Oh
I
yeah, at that time there was like long distance stuff.
yes, long so all the money, whatever was saved, was only used on phone calls. I
Yeah.
still remember all those different things I used to do. There used to be those prepaid cards
Okay, yeah, yeah.
where you actually listen to these ads and you earn 5 minutes. So I remember listening to so many of those ads
Yeah,
to
yeah.
earn those
And just
five.
after 5 minutes, you talk, and the phone will get
Yeah,
cut.
phone gets disconnected.
Yeah.
We've been a lot about our age also in this
But
conversation.
no, yeah, but this was in 2000 what?
2000,
This 98.
99, 2000.
Yeah.
99, 2000, right? Okay, I see. Yeah, 99, 2000, what were we doing? We were in France. Madhuri and I were in France at that time.
Hmm.
No, no, no. France or Canada, somewhere. Anyway, it's not about our transit, it's about your transit.
I still remember
I
chatting with each other from the computer labs through a Unix prompt.
Yes, Unix and
ICQ had just come, but we were still chatting on a Unix prompt.
yeah, yeah.
It was
No, I remember those days. Yeah. I mean, going to the cyber, I mean, we used to call uh, the mainframe computer at IIT the cyber. So we used to go to cyber and I don't know, what was it, 1991, we would send an email, which was like the coolest thing ever, like instant. Yeah. All right, so so you're in Pittsburgh, you're on the West Coast, time zone differences, etc., a lot of phone bills, and then what is it, 1.5 year, 2 year grad school, and now it's a big transition because now it's a job or maybe marriage. I don't know. So how was that transition?
Yeah, I think the next transition was absolutely, I think after graduation, the first thing on your mind is to get a good job. So that was definitely, I feel it was a pleasant transition for me. I was really enjoying the process of interviewing, and at that time, the companies would pay for you to travel and go to
Uh,
their offices, and it was such an exciting time because it was like I traveled to so many different places, I saw so many different workplaces. So it was very, very exciting, and I ended up signing my job with Cisco Systems. So that was my first job, and it wasn't a big transition in terms of relocation or anything because I was already in LA, and so just had to move to the Bay Area. I had a lot of my school friends in the Bay Area that I ended up staying with. So even though it was a big transition in the sense of, getting your first job, right? But at another level, it was fairly comfortable because it was a job I wanted. Um, Even the workplace was fairly kind of friendly. So it was actually one of the nicer transitions, if you may call it, or less.
Less traumatic transition. Yeah. Yeah. And from Pittsburgh?
Yeah, for me it was a sudden shift in the gears, because I had come. So I missed the point. From civil engineering, I had already switched to computer science when I came here, and I was studying information systems at CMU, and
Mhm.
I was pretty sure that I would end up in a tech job right after that, right? Because that's what I was studying towards. And those were the days of tech boom, right?
Boom. Yeah.
Dot-com boom.
E-commerce, yeah.
You know, we were getting offers left, right, and center. I mean, I can't even remember how many times I was flown out to California. Under the guise of an interview, I would just go see her. But those were the days. Like, you'd get like pre-IPO stocks being offered, and I knew that I know what I know, and it's not worth what these guys are offering me. So there's a disconnect somewhere. But the music was too loud. It was. I was going with the flow.
Yeah.
And then one day on campus, I saw this friend of mine who had a very long face, who was coming back from an interview. This was the last semester of the interview, and he was coming back from an interview. And in a very long face, I said, "What happened?" And he said, "There's this company that has come on campus, and killing everyone on math questions, and they're just sabotage. They are just here to ruin you. They're just making you feel miserable in the interview." And I'm like, "What's this company?" He says, "It's Goldman Sachs. It's some finance company in New York."
Mhm.
I never heard of that company. So I said, let me just go give it a shot. So I go to that place, and I see many such people with a long face coming out. And I asked that person that I would like an interview, and they said, "Sorry, all the slots are full." So and I for some reason I was so keen on it. I suddenly got very keen. That's FOMO, right? Complete FOMO took over.
Oh, yeah.
I want it, and they said, "I'm sorry." I said, "Okay, fine. I mean, maybe some other lifetime. It was not meant to be."
Uh-huh.
And then at that night, I still put my name on that. And that evening, I get a phone call that there was a dropout at the last minute. So tomorrow we have one slot if you want to come in. So I said, "Okay, fine." I went to that, and I don't want to go into details, but the first thing that guy asked me is to solve a partial differential equation, and I could solve it partially, but that was I really enjoyed the challenge. I really loved what those guys were doing.
Mm.
And I'm like, I forget about dot-com companies. I really want to go into this financial mathematics, like area of financial trading.
Mm.
It really fascinated me. So long story short, things start falling in place as in the next few months, and I ended up in New York. My entire class went to California.
Yeah, and you came to New York.
I was the only one from my program, from my entire batch, who came to New York in a not so glamorous job. But I really felt my calling. I felt this was a thing that I wanted to do.
Even his girlfriend then was in California, but still he came to New York.
Yeah, I was like, this is it, man. This is it.
Yeah.
I
Kushal,
really enjoyed that challenge. Yeah.
somebody gifted this to me, but I think this is for you.
I understand.
It's a really good one.
Okay, great. So let's put these now. These have been some pretty significant transitions, right? So let's put these transitions now in retrospect with all the today's you. What advice would you give yesterday's you who was going through these transitions? What would you do maybe slightly differently today, looking back? We don't usually look back, but let's look.
I think not feeling, in financial trading we have this thing of, your hand shakes when you try to click that mouse button. We call it, don't let your hand shake. You know, don't falter. And
Hmm.
I feel, there were several times when I had this feeling of, what if,
Hmm.
what if this fails, what if this doesn't work out.
Right.
But as I still took that decisions, or somehow I ended up taking that decision, it always worked out. It always worked out. And there's no way for me to see how it would have worked out the other
Yeah.
way had I not taken it. But it's a moot point.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So had I known that, it's going to work out, and not to fret about it at that time, I think the transition, that pulling the trigger, would have been slightly,
Easy.
more
Yeah.
effortless.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
But this only comes after the fact, right?
It's only retrospective. Yes. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think
And
for me, it has been, I would say, the transition of the biggest transition of my life was when I learned Sudarshan Kriya, right? And
hmm.
learned the power of how, by practicing it regularly, how you can really control your own mind, right? And
Wait. Regularly or daily?
daily.
Ah, daily.
For me, daily is regular, but yes.
No, because I had some pretty smart students. They said, "Oh, sir, we are regular with my Kriya once every 9 days." Yeah, that is regular.
The
Yeah.
frequency is important.
Yes. But having
Daily. Okay, right.
practiced that, right, is when I really realized how much I have let the, like when I was even talking about, right, perception, creating your own world in your own mind, and then creating misery and joy in that same little elusive world that you live in, which is filled with fears, doubts, ambition, so many of these different things, right?
Yeah.
That's what I feel is that to my older self, I would just say be free, just be, enjoy every moment, whether it's a success, whether it's a failure that you kind of term in your mind. I feel that's the advice I would give my younger self is don't fret about the small things. Like how Kushal said, this whole thing is
Right.
planned. It's gonna go the way it's gonna go. But the best way to go through it is having fun doing that, right? I feel during those times, because I did not have that understanding, I let it impact my health to a very significant level. I got really unwell, like there's some, impact on my body that's kind of much more longer term than, than I would have wanted it to stay. So that's one thing that kind of what I would go back in time and do.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's so important. I remember, what is it? I think it's Peanuts or one of those comic strips where the guy says, "Oh, what's the point? Eventually, we are all going to die." And then the other guy says, "Yes, but till that time happens, you are living every day."
Yes.
This is the most important thing to realize that it's like, yeah, fine. So this was so the how do you say the Sudarshan Kriya course or transition happened what 2005 6 something like that.
Right.
Yes, 2005.
In on the west coast or on the east coast, because you still got a time zone difference, right? When we
No,
haven't merged the
that's
time zones
not
yet.
what happened. I
Yeah, never.
eventually moved to the East Coast and I ended up working for Goldman also. And so this transition happened when we both were working at Goldman.
Okay.
And so it happened on the East Coast.
Happened on the east coast, right. Okay. So this was 2005.
Yeah.
And after the Sudarshan Kriya thing happened, did you see a difference in your approach to the same Goldman job? Was
Yeah.
the
Big
yes?
time.
But to be honest with you, before I noticed that my approach had changed, people around me had noticed it before me. So
Hmm.
the first time I learned about, oh, my approach has changed is when people around me started complimenting on it. It
Huh.
was only after that that my awareness even moved to the point like, oh, yeah, I used to handle this situation differently.
Huh.
And I still remember that one moment. I was on the trading desk and it was in the middle of the trading day and there was construction work happening in our building and somebody cut the Ethernet,
Oh no.
even whatever the line, and there was no internet at all in the entire building. So this was the first time in all these years of creating this disaster planning, recovery planning documentations, right? There's a whole plan for all of this that you work on. This was the first time we had to execute that,
Yeah.
which means we had to move all the traders to another building, set up, get the connections going. It was just a lot happening, and the markets are moving, the positions are out there. It's probably the most stressful situation you are in. And I just went through it. I did whatever I could, just being on top of it, not even thinking much about it. And next day, one of the traders sent a note to my managers telling that he was really impressed how I managed this whole situation,
Mm.
stayed on top of it, did not really lose my mind, did not lose the focus. And that for me was one of the first kind of, biggest indications of how this breathing technique had helped me.
Huh. Right. Yeah, it's so true. Others notice it before we notice it.
Because it becomes a part of your nature, and so you are not putting effort. It's happening so effortlessly that you don't notice it, so that's the beauty of this whole technique for me. It's just, yeah.
It, yeah. It's like, so many times. Okay, so coming back to a little bit physics, when you are falling into the black hole, you won't even know when you've gone past the event transition, but the other guy outside will say, oh, this guy finished. It's like that. Almost it's like
Yeah, exactly.
that. Cool. So 2005, and now from engineering world, you've come to, I don't know, finance world, both of you guys, right? And then when did the 2 plus 1 plus 1 equal to 2 happen?
One plus one
Or
is
1 plus 1 is 1 happen? Sorry, 1 plus 1 is 1. I had to do some math geek things, right?
in 2002. Right?
Yeah.
Sometime in 2002. So
But they were
Sometimes
still in.
the wedding happened.
yeah. No, no, I'm saying I can see fast forwarded to 2005. I think
But yeah, yeah. But this was a when you guys got together, it was still a two city problem.
Yes, it
yeah,
was.
yeah.
Because I was in, so at least we moved on the same coast, but I was in North Carolina, and he was
Oh,
in New York City.
right.
And I was working remotely from, because there was an office in North Carolina, so I could work from there. And
Mhm.
so that whole transition was also a very interesting transition, living apart.
Yeah.
And very interesting enough, during this transition is when 9/11 happened.
Mhm.
And that's when Kushal was actually in the building.
Yeah.
And so for me, that is when I felt the distance the most between the both of us, because I was in North Carolina, he was here. And I think those 12 hours of my life were probably the most,
Yeah.
I don't know, the scariest time, very anxious. I wasn't able to talk to him. Um, but yeah, when I think of the long distance relationship that we've had, I think that was one of the big events that happened in that time.
Yeah. And this was even pre Sudarshan Kriya days. So it's even more.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Life goes for a spin. Yeah.
totally. I mean, it was something. Actually, this was one of the most um, watershed transitions in my life. Yeah, all
Mhm.
this time, okay, you chose this job, or you chose this line of education, or you know, you grew up suddenly when you came to this country. All those were secondary, but this was the first time I saw death from so close, and it was just touch and go. I mean, I could have been a statistic. So, yeah, at that time, it was like a rude wake up call. It was a very at some level there was still that vacuum, like, oh, I don't know just what happened. Sometimes when you hear that, yet at some another level there was this void. I was like, what is this? Like, this could all these things that I'm working towards, this chasing bonuses or eyeing for this VP, whatever it is, all this could have been over in one split second.
Yeah.
Poof, poof. And it was so surreal, that it kind of changed the way I was thinking. I really felt that life was really too short to be doing what the world thought is cool.
Mm.
The world wants you to do. And
Because
that kind of took away the last shreds of me feeling, bound by doing things the way people expected me to do. So after those, the transitions became a lot more easier and a lot more gutsy.
Spontaneous,
Yeah, yeah.
dynamic, I
I would
think
just say that a
irrational.
lot more irrational for sure. I mean, irrationality is part of my DNA, but still,
Yeah. But it's amazing, isn't it? It takes a big jolt to realize that we've been playing the game by other people's rules and not by our own rules.
yeah.
It's an amazing.
It wakes like to wake up from that reverie. Like you need something like this to say, come on, like.
Right.
And so after that, I started looking for fulfillment, and I looked for it in so many outerly world. We began traveling to exotic locations. All this kind of stuff you do to feel fulfilled.
Hmm.
And it was a distraction for a short period of time, but nothing far reaching, nothing really impacting. And that's when I learned kriya,
Huh.
Sudha kriya, and that was a game changer for me at that time.
Yeah. So I have to ask you this, since both of you are Goldman people, did you get that typical Rolex, whatever watch that all these traders, the fancy? I never have. My watch has always been very engineering type watch. Yeah, not one of those. Did you guys ever have one of those watches?
That's a story that can get me in trouble. So
It's like you exactly know what to not ask but ask. I think the short answer to that is no. But the longer answer is I tried to gift it to Kushal, but he had me return it. Now, how that whole thing happened is another story.
but I agree with you, Sandeep. I can't see. There's another reason why I moved away from finance is it is it is an environment of extremes, and not only that, it's a place where vanity is not only expected of you, but it's also rewarded to some level. And at some level, there was definitely that intellectual stimulation there, and that was tremendously rewarding. But the other aspect that came with it
Hmm.
was actually very unnatural. It was a very difficult thing to keep up with.
Hmm.
And these externalities like a Rolex watch is exactly part of something like that.
Yeah. Okay, so then let's fast forward to 2008, which was a really big transition, right? Because that's when you and I met.
Yes.
I was like, what happened in
My
2000?
2008.
I I don't know about you, but for me the connection was instant.
Yeah, that was
It
it.
was like lifetime say somehow it just happened.
Yeah.
It was a good project to work on.
I'm a control freak, a self-admitted control freak, and I don't usually let go of control when it comes to, especially in the moment, right, when you're executing. But when you came, I was like, yeah, of course, this I knew you could do it, and so it was very easy to say, okay, come, please help me with this. So I was also amazed.
For me, the way you were introduced in my life through him first was like you had asked him to come for some project to Delaware and
Hmm.
for something, and Kushal is like, I'm driving to Delaware, and I'm like, but who is this random guy in your life who have I never met and you want to drive to Delaware? Like it's not like our lives are not busy enough and now you want to drive to Delaware for a project I can't
It was
even
a filming
understand.
project.
Yeah, I couldn't even understand. It's like, no, I have made a commitment and I need to go. And that's when it's like, okay, this guy must be something to
Yeah, yeah, I remember that. I mean, it was such a big help that Kushal came for this. I mean, Sri was here. and we had to record his talk. And I said, "All right, Kushal, please come." And then after that, I didn't have to worry about it because I knew it's taken care of. Otherwise, I have to follow up 50 times. Oh, this, that, nothing. I said, "All right, check mark done. I can move to something else." Great. So then things are happening. You guys are settling in, and then somehow you decided that, all right, done. You're going to transition back to India. I mean, what?
That is something I've noticed. I thought it was just me, but the more time I've spent with her, it's becoming very evident that both of us have um, this thing in us where the minute we get comfortable with something, we drop it and move on to the next thing.
Hmm. Yeah.
You know,
And then we wonder why exactly did we drop that thing?
and this has happened. This is like, call it a conditioning or a pattern, but this has happened over and over and over again in our lives.
Hmm.
It keeps things interesting for sure, but there's some merit to stability also. But
Yeah.
opposite values, I guess.
Opposite values, right?
But I think at that point of time, the move to India, I think like most of us, right, who come to this country, always have this thought running at the back of our mind is like, I want to go back home. I want to be there for parents. Eventually, like, so that thought is very strongly somehow running, as a parallel wave in your
Mm.
head. And so for us, it was like, let's not wait till that moment where we have to just make that decision then, but make it more like a planned move so
Mhm.
that, we can be in India closer to our families.
Right.
And that was kind of the thought process behind that. Plus, we felt like, yeah, we had done what we wanted to in this country and we were ready for another adventure.
Hmm.
So that's how that started, though it didn't last too long. And we were back in this country. So,
Yeah, but your move to India was a little bit transition for me also because now I had a place to stay in Mumbai when I came on the night flight. It reaches at like 8:30 at night. It was
yes.
so nice. I remember we did this once also. I just came to your house and I slept
So
nicely
nice.
and
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, many things have happened. All right, so then you're in India, but before you went to India, there's another transition that happened. I'm going to remind you of it. It is when you guys started your first, or maybe the first physical location of the Art of Living Center in Jersey City, right?
Yes.
And I remember the drive. I was driving on 95, and I got a call from Kushal, and I
Get the
all my rules. I broke all my rules and I picked up the phone and he says, "Where are you?" I said, "Oh, I'm on exit such and such." He says, "Turn around, go back to IKEA and aisle number 17, frame number 23, buy it." I said, "What?" And I cannot say no to Kushal. So I made a U-turn, went to IKEA, bought it, and I came to your house. And then I realized that you guys have invented work. Remember that?
This one.
Yeah, right.
I was hoping you
Sometimes
would.
I sit and watch from sidelines because you don't want to put your finger in the fire when it's in the
But see, that goes back to the whole transition of my love for cooking, right? From not wanting to cook to going and creating work in cooking. So,
Yeah. So when have you noticed this over the years? Have you noticed that we tend to invent stuff just because we want to do something over and above what we ourselves can do? Have you seen that?
a lot, a lot. I think personally for me, one thing I've noticed a lot with myself is like my mind has so many ideas, so many things it wants to do. And in that, I forget that the physical body is not capable of keeping up with all of those things, right? And so, what happened a lot for me, especially, probably a few years ago, I tell a lot of people now, I think I have a better relationship with my body now. I listen to my body. But before, it would always be a point where my mind would say, do this, and without even thinking about the body, I would jump in and I would keep going, going, going till the body crashed. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm always sick. I'm not keeping well. Why is this happening to me? And it would lead me in that whole thing. And only after being, I don't know, hit like this for so many times in my life did I realize that it
Hmm.
wasn't that hard. If you listen to your body and work with it, you can actually do a lot more things than you think you do when you just go with the flow and just implement every idea that comes in your mind.
Right.
And also, there's a little bit of osmosis that happens there, right? Because it's not, of course, there are some desires that come from within based on your own samskaras, based on the impressions you've collected over the lifetimes.
Hmm.
But then sometimes it's also comparison, right? You look at someone, you look at something, and you say, I want that.
Ah,
It may not be the most life supporting thing for you, but somehow you get pulled into it, and next thing you know, you're doing that, you're following that.
yeah.
So I guess when to discriminate between what is really life supporting versus what your inner voice is truly telling you.
Ah,
I think that's a lesson you learn over a period. I learned over a long period of time. It's like,
hmm.
okay, when to say no, this is not what the voice from inside, but it's just I'm getting pulled outwards.
Oh, yeah, I guess this comes from experience and also the ability to listen to the inner voice. Usually, we don't listen to the inner voice. We are so, oh,
It's
I want my center party to have a JGD cake. Okay, all right, let's go. Let's invent work. Oh man.
I thought we left that topic behind us.
I was looking for that photo. Somehow I can't find it. I would have pasted it right here saying, look, this is how not to do work. Yeah.
And the irony with that cake, I think everything comes with its own little karma. So, for all of you to give a little background, like for the center opening, I wanted to bake a cake. I love baking cakes. And so I decided I want to make a JGD cake, Jai Gurudev cake. And so I made a J and a G and a D, not realizing how hard it would be to do it. But of course, since I had put my mind to it, I had to get it done. And Sandeep had come the night before at my house, so he was roped into that as well. So he went through the agony. Next day, the center opening, we go there, everything's set up, and the cake was a surprise. So we put the cake in the room next to the center room because there were lots of empty rooms in the whole center. So we kind of you would use a lot of those rooms just for storage or something. So we put there, and then somebody accidentally locks the room without having the key to that room. So now it's time to cut the cake, and the cake is sitting in a room locked up.
By itself.
Yeah.
That is when it was like I had to practice detachment. Okay, doesn't matter, how much effort I put into it, how much I was looking forward to it. And I still remember at that time, Anurag was there and he called the, locksmith and got it opened up. And we finally, all of us did have the JGD cake.
Yeah. Right. So then, okay, all right. So then let's cut to, so went to India. Then you guys came back. And when you came back, it was a completely shifting of roles, isn't it? At least for Kushal. You went into like, I don't know, app programming, something like that.
Yeah, that's another kind of
Transition.
transition, right?
Yeah,
Having done finance enough, and
yeah.
okay, fine, let's do something else. Something that I've always wanted to do. In actually, the during my college, during the uh, during
CMU.
that program, I'd done my first startup, and that startup had failed.
Okay.
So if we had stuck with that, it became a big idea later on. But of course, yeah,
Hindsight.
it failed, and that had left a little seed, that had unsprouted seed, which is like, no, I have to do it some point in time.
Hmm.
And since we had come back again, it was a clean slate anyways. We came back like, with two bags, when we came back.
Yeah, I remember the story of two bags. How's it working out with two bags, buddy?
Well, that's it's still left as a wishful thinking, but anyway. So Then we came back and said, fine, it's a clean start anyways, new beginning anyways. So might as well do something different rather than going back to that same grind of, 7 to 7 of Wall Street. And I found a great opportunity at that time to do something. So we started, Archie and I, we started a tech startup at that time.
Right. No, it was pretty cool tech startup. It was like an app integrator, right? It was getting all the cool apps in
Yeah,
one place. It was a very nice idea. But when you guys came back, Alak, you went back to like finance job, right?
Yes, so I think that again was a big transition, right? Because when we moved to India, we sent all of our stuff in container, right? And then we came back again, two suitcases, and so I came back before Kushal, and then about 6 months later, he came, and I already had a finance job here, so I was working on Wall Street at that time,
Mhm.
and Kushal was focusing on the startup. So, but it was again start. It was almost like starting from scratch, like getting a rental apartment and figuring out like furniture and all those different things.
Yeah. So this was the second transition really from India to the US, right? It was the first time you came for grad school, and now the second time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the second time was, I know different, but was it easier or because of the experience?
It was very different. Of course, I felt like at one level very supported. You know, when I came, I stayed with Amit and Shubhra for 6 months. So in that sense, it wasn't that new country all by yourself feeling. It felt very like coming back to your community. Somehow, this place had become more home. You know, over all these years. So that feeling was not there. But at the same time, that resistance, right, that you have in between, that oh, now I have to start from again, like you're established, right, you're in the system and you were moving with it, and now, and you'd worked very very hard to get there,
Yeah.
and now you were back to the start, and having gone, this is how the mind works also, right, having gone through that once, you think, oh, I don't want to go through that again, right? So somewhere that resistance in the mind to being, oh god, like there we go, now we have to start from scratch, I think that was the challenging aspect to deal with. But once you're in it, I think just things start moving, and we didn't even feel it, but this was kind of the initial phase of it.
Right. So that happened, and then I'm just fast forwarding in my mind. Then you decided that all right, enough of helping other people make money. You need to now get back into touch with yourself and let the culinary skills sort of take forefront, isn't it? That's a big transition. So you guys started your own company, Elements Truffles, isn't it?
Yes.
And that was not a it's not I mean, people don't realize how much back end work there is to get into a, I don't know, food business. It's not. So walk us through that transition, because you did a lot of things which I don't think many people know.
So honestly speaking, I think, sometimes not having too much knowledge or information actually works to your own benefit. And I think that's what happened with Elements Truffles, right? I think for me personally, see, Kushal had already done a couple of startups, right? So he had done one startup after his grad school. Then there was this tech startup. He was already dabbling his feet into his finance startup. And for me, I had put this label on myself that, oh, I cannot be an entrepreneur. I've always worked for somebody else. If somebody has a plan, I can execute it. But I don't think I am a visionary, or I don't think I can kind of build that stuff.
Mhm.
But at the same time, having worked in Wall Street and technology for all this time, one thing was very clear, that this was not what was something I was meant to do.
Yeah,
It
Rolex watch was not your thing, right?
No, not at all. No, like, and I knew that food was my thing. And a lot of credit also goes to, friends like yourself would always say that, oh, you should really look into this, you should start something of your own. There would always be this thing whenever I would create something or make something, even for Kushal, right? It would always be like, I think you're so good at this. So somewhere that seed was sown that I wanted to do something with food. And when I quit my job, I think it was a lot of tremendous amount of support from Kushal at that point of time, right? To really push me into saying, what is it that you will lose? What is the worst that will happen? I think in our mind we have all these fears, but when we actually face them, we realize that the worst is not that bad, right? And I think he's the one who kind of just said, just go with it, because if you don't follow this, then you'll somewhere feel that regret. And I don't know, what would you rather live with, that regret or the possibility, remote possibility of what we coin as a failure, right?
Yeah.
And I think again, this goes back to the conditioning of the mind being always wanting to be in the top five, right? Like that, somewhere that was still there in the mind, which was preventing me to follow that. And yeah, I think it's just been such a phenomenal journey in the sense that, Kushal was actually ended up doing two startups at the time, because being married to me, officially he wasn't on Elements Truffles, but I think he's been part of this company ever since. Now we both do it in official capacity. But one thing I realized with Elements Truffles was that it was a lot of hard work,
Mm.
was barely getting paid anywhere close. Like sometimes it was less than a minimum wage worker, right? But there was some kind of joy. There was some kind of peace in the mind. I was able to sleep peacefully. I would wake up with that enthusiasm.
Oh.
Somehow that simplicity in the mind had come back.
Mhm.
And that had way, way, way more value than any of the other things.
Yeah.
We would laugh at how the parameters that govern our life had changed.
Have changed, right? That was my next question, actually.
Yeah, because at some point in time, a movement in the interest rate curves because of a GDP data or an unemployment data which throws the hedges off would be something that would stress me out.
Mm.
Now the things that stress us out is, oh, the UPS truck did not come for pickup today.
Or the automatic folding machine is not
Oh, the
working.
coding machine is not. So abstraction has just come down to something so simple,
Oh.
something so tangible that it's a joy to go through it. I mean, we I had more of that than she had, in fact, where I had this thing that, yeah, it's a food startup, it's a new challenge, but then, I've always been in this finance. I mean, between two of us, we have these 7 degrees. We have studied so much, and here we are wrapping chocolates, which requires none of these. Is this the right thing that we're doing? Is this the best use of our time? And of course, oftentimes in startups, you first look at the outcome, which is not always the satisfaction. You look at the end outcome, right? And it's like there's no end in sight, and what are we doing? But then as you go through the process, as you mature through the process, there's this such a feeling of joy that you get that, first of all, it's our own baby. There is no external, impact or stimulus that's creating a dent in it. That we don't have to worry about, oh, this is going to fall apart. If, for example, there's an investor, they'll say, oh, jump up, and you have to say, how high. And there was nothing like that. So it was a complete thing that we could control using what we've learned through what we really stand for our values, and at our own pace, on our own terms. So
Yeah.
it's very different, but a lot of fun nonetheless.
And I think it has really helped me build a very different perspective about myself. I think I've come out in this last 5 years way more confident, way more stronger from within, and way more free from the labels that I put on myself. And a lot of definitions around, I don't know, success, failure, um, I don't know, joy, happiness, all of that has changed significantly.
Okay.
I think sometimes we make a concept of happiness, right? Or we
Mm.
this is what's bringing us happiness, but experiencing it, like it's a different feeling.
Yeah.
And
Go.
word satisfaction is something so elusive. I don't think that really exists. I never knew it really existed, you know, till I branched out on my own.
Yeah. So you guys have sort of the good fortune to be in close proximity, at least for some amount of time, with Guruji Sri Ravi Shankar, right? And you've seen him work. I mean, he's just a magician. So what skills have you observed on the way he works that you as entrepreneurs have said, all right, wait a minute, if we do it this way, it's going to be much easier as an entrepreneur. So most people don't know this. So I'm just going to put you on the spot.
I think for me, right, public speaking has been one of my biggest challenges, right? Whether it's getting in front of a Facebook Live like this, or I don't know, talking in front of different people or things like that. And every time I go through that fear, one thing that I always remember is how Gurudev is. And you know what he says is, be yourself.
Hmm.
I think somewhere in our head we think I want to be prepared for every question that's asked, and I want to be able to give the best possible answer that is out there. But what I've realized in this whole process is that people actually want to hear your authentic, genuine self, and it's okay, if you don't have the perfect answer. But if you are joyful, if you are centered, if you are connected within, right, and you are yourself in that moment, that's what people in front of you need to hear. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways. Like, I think every time I do this, because I go through that fear, that the fear of public speaking is real. It is real. And so actually I would do something where I would dance, or just loosen up before a conversation like this, instead of going in the head.
Mhm.
And so that is one tangible thing that I always kind of apply in my life.
Mhm. And the math guy?
The the erstwhile math guy.
No, no. Once a math guy, always a math guy, buddy.
I think what I have, first of all, there are two things. Right? One is kind of a flick, like a directions. It's is when put in difficult situations, I I catch myself asking this, that okay, how would Gurudev have handled the situation had it been here?
Hmm.
And that gets me going, right? And I think one of the biggest things that I particularly have taken from him is being in the moment and doing without worrying about the outcome.
Ah.
That's easier. I mean, we've always heard about this growing up and all, but finally I could found someone who was actually implementing it, who was actually doing it.
Hmm.
Whether it is putting together 3.75 million people in one place at a scale, at an unimaginable scale, where anybody would try to do it, people think, are you nuts? But he still goes and does it and pulls it off, right?
Yeah.
So there's nothing that, I mean, if we were to start thinking about, oh, but this could go wrong, that could get, so that's something I really, really learned from him, is like just action now and worrying later. So being in action,
Or
no,
never worrying.
or not, never worrying. Yeah, worrying later is always never comes. So, but
Yeah.
always being in action, always being in action.
Right. Yeah. It is the is the fear of future sorrow that spoils it now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's great. So anything else you would like to share with people? Because maybe there's something you want to say that I didn't ask.
No, no.
No?
I think I want to, when you said the word transitions, right? I really, well, the first thing that came to my mind is that where is the choice to make the transition? Do we have the choice to make the transition?
Mhm.
And I think it's something for all of, for me, at least for me to contemplate on, and
Mhm.
I think about it often, is whatever happens, good or bad, is there really a choice?
Mhm.
We have
Yeah.
talked about choiceless awareness and all that. Scores of volumes have been written about it.
Mhm.
And there's an ongoing debate about free will and destiny, all that stuff, right? But
All that stuff. But transition is transition. Whether it's choiceless or not, it is happening.
it's just a happening.
Always happen. Great. So this was a great. I think it was helpful for me to look at someone else's transitions. It's easier to look at someone else's transitions and then relate. Oh wait, I've gone through almost exactly all the transition except I've not gone to India and back. Okay, twice. Yeah,
We've gone from India to France to
Canada
Canada.
to
France to Canada to yeah, right. It's great. Awesome. I'm sorry it took us so many um, months to get this together, but hopefully this is not the end of it, and you guys will come back.
of course.
Yeah.
This I think this conversation is just, having known you for so many years, there's such a comfort level that I don't know, it just feels very good to be chatting. Almost feels like, in the same room having a
Yeah,
chai
yeah.
and some fruit cake.
Fruit cake, yeah. We have to make fruit cake. Yes.
So,
Awesome. It's been awesome. Thank you very much for, taking time off from your busy kitchen life. And it's been fun. But for me, it's been so nice. Personally, I don't know. I've sent you guys so many photos of, when I go to these stores and I look at these aisles of chocolate and I said, one day I'm going to put Element truffles here. I've sent you these photos. And I was telling people that for me it's become almost second nature that I want some chocolate turmeric infused. I know the proprietor. I'm just going to call her and say, all right, ship it. Done. You know,
yes.
so
And
awesome.
it's been a beautiful journey, and I think we're just enjoying it and see how it unfolds.
Yeah. So we'll put the link to this Elements Truffles page, etc., on the description box. So, um, are you guys shipping to India and other countries? Or,
Mm, Not
No.
yet, but we are planning to start something in India this year. Fingers crossed. So,
okay.
yeah.
And are you guys doing okay through the COVID situation?
Fortunately, yes, it was a challenging time when it hit, but again, it was a transition that we went through in
Yeah.
the business where we had to make some changes. And yeah, given the circumstances, I think we're very grateful for how things are happening.
Awesome. Okay, so next year we will catch up on US Open. Yeah?
This year,
This year, right?
this year.
This, yeah, yeah, this year. Right.
Yes,
Are you watching Australian Open? No?
I missed it this year. Yes. But I follow your posts, so I know what's happening. What's important.
What's important, right?
That's my favorite. Rafa has gone home, so
Oh, no, yeah, right.
Just taken away the motivation.
Yeah, yeah. I remember the first US Open thing also was a transition gifted by Kushal, right?
yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome. Oh, I mean, we can do another session on just transitions.
Exactly. I think we need to.
Yeah. There's been so many. Remember the one we showed up at your house at like 2 o'clock in the morning and we had, the Max present.
And how every time you come to New York, you end up driving.
Oh my God. This time I'm not going to do it. Awesome. All right. So, any other last words of advice for people,
No,
especially
just
entrepreneurs? I mean, people are a little bit scared to start something new, and you guys have done it so many times. So,
I think I would say it's very normal to feel scared. I think everybody does. But don't let that stop you. Just take baby steps, keep moving towards it, and more doors will open. I think sometimes we try to plan it way far ahead,
hmm,
and that's when a lot of fears come in. But maybe plan the next 5 steps, take those, and then you will automatically know what the next 5 steps are. And I think that's a very kind of planned way to get started. And once you're on it, there's nothing stopping you. That much I know.
I I think it's about finding your own bungee cord, right? See, bungee jumping is scary, right? Leaping off a cliff is scary, but you do it because you know that there is a cord that's protecting you. I found my chord. So once you find your own chord, then you can jump as high as you want.
Or as low as you want, whichever.
Drop as high as you want.
From as yeah,
It's about finding that bungee cord.
yeah, right. Awesome, man. It's been so nice. One of the best mornings I've spent. I
Yes.
like chatting with you guys. So
Next time, let's do it in person.
in person, yeah. I mean, offer is open. You guys never took it up, so I had to put it in there, isn't it?
Exactly. On Facebook Live.
All right, people. Bye.
Bye.
Adios.
Let me stop this.